have an urgent warning for the people of Indiana. I have some shocking and disturbing news about the upcoming session of the Indiana General Assembly. There's going to be an effort in the 2016 General Assembly to give men the right to be in a women's restroom and women's locker room. This legislation at the State House must be stopped. I've worked with senators and representatives from both political parties at the State House for over 34 years. During that time, I've reviewed over 22,000 separate pieces of legislation. However, the effort to pass a bill that will be introduced in the upcoming session of the 2016 General Assembly that would give men access to women's restrooms and women's locker rooms throughout the entire state of Indiana may be the most dangerous bill I've ever seen. This legislation would permit a man that says he's a woman, even though he is biologically a man, to go into a women's restroom and women's locker room in Indiana. This legislation would give men who are sexual predators, rapists, and child molesters access to women and children in a women's restroom and women's locker room. This legislation will be supported and promoted by key political leaders and powerful special interest groups and corporations that have millions of dollars to spend to control the legislative process at the State House. If this dangerous legislation were to become law, what would happen here in the state of Indiana? Well, here are just 3 examples of the disastrous impact the legislation would have on the women and children of Indiana. Example number 1. Your family goes to a restaurant in any one of the 92 counties in Indiana, and your young daughter or granddaughter, let's say she's only 10 or 11, goes to the women's restroom, and while she is in the restroom, a man who claims to be a woman walks in the restroom with her. This would be wrong and should never happen in Indiana. Example number 2. Your family is traveling around Indiana, and you stop at a rest stop on the highway. Your wife and daughter go into the women's restroom, and they find a man who claims to be a woman in the restroom with them, with your wife and your daughter. This would be wrong and should never happen in Indiana. Example number 3. Your young daughter or granddaughter goes to a public pool or fitness facility, and in the process of changing clothes, a man who claims to be a woman comes into the women's and girls' locker room where she's changing. The man then begins changing his clothes in front of your daughter or granddaughter. This would be wrong and should never happen in Indiana. These 3 examples would be every parent's worst nightmare. Let me say again, it is never right for a man to ever be in a women's restroom or women's locker room. We must protect the women and children of Indiana. That includes your wife, your sister, your mom, and your children and grandchildren.
That's all, folks.